Hello, I'm a day late reviewing Iron Man 3. Here we are in April of 2022, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also called the MCU, looks like this. But this wasn't always the case. We're going to travel back to 2013. At this point in time, the MCU was only 5 years old, and it was only just starting to pick up speed and popularity. They'd announced they were going to have different phases for their movies, and Iron Man 3 was to be the first of Phase 2. Writer-slash-director Shane Black had been tapped to both write and direct the film. At the time, he was best known as the writer for the first two Lethal Weapon movies, and as the character Hawkins in 1987's Predator. But he had directed a film all the way back in 2005 called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. It starred Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. You probably didn't see this film in the theater, not many did. I know I didn't. But I did get the DVD, and boy howdy, I love this film. And it is what got me hyped for Iron Man 3. Now this isn't to say I wasn't excited for Iron Man 3 before I knew Black was directing. After all, I did enjoy all of the movies in the newly budding MCU, and let's face it, Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. But Black had a pretty good writing track record, and like I said, I was really impressed with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So why my disappointment with Iron Man 3? It starts with the trailer. We get Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin. We see the 10 rings on his fingers. He says that some call him a terrorist, but that he thinks of himself as a teacher. So now I'm starting to feel it. In the first Iron Man movie, the 10 Rings was the name of the terrorist organization that had captured Tony in Afghanistan. Here, it looks like we'll meet its leader. Kingsley, by the way, is an Oscar-winning actor who made his bones playing Gandhi back in 1982. So I'm really starting to think this is going to work. We have callbacks to both Iron Man and the Avengers with the 10 Rings, and Tony's voiceover in the trailer talking about having a hard time dealing with the aftermath of the battle in New York. So now, instead of having another standalone movie, Marvel's films are becoming more interconnected. So once again, what happened? Why the disappointment? Well, for that, we need to talk about the film. The film opens with a voiceover by Tony Stark saying that we create our own demons as we watch 3 Iron Man suits explode. It's then time for a flashback to see the events that set whatever is currently happening in motion. The year is 1999, and Tony is at a tech summit in Switzerland, where he is putting the moves on one Maya Hansen. She wants to discuss her work. He wants to get in her pants. They head upstairs to Tony's room, but before they can get there, we are introduced to Aldrich Killian. He is both a fan of Tony and Miss Hansen's. He says he's been following her work since she was at MIT. He is looking for funding for a think tank he is creating called Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM. As everyone is getting off the elevator, Tony tells Killian to meet him up on the roof so that they can discuss business privately. Once in his room, Tony and Maya actually discuss her work. She's working on a way to recode the human brain so that it will improve disease prevention and injury regeneration. She calls the project Extremis. Tony says let's continue the discussion in the bedroom, and Happy fondles some of the fronds on Maya's plant. Maya asks him not to do that as she follows Tony into the bedroom, where they surprisingly continue the conversation. Happy spitefully breaks a twig off of her plant, and we see it start to regrow. As Tony and Maya start to kiss, there's a small explosion in the living room where the plant was. Maya says this is what she was talking about, the glitch. We then see Killian standing on the roof in the snow, pointlessly waiting for Tony, and then later, Tony writing something on his name badge before leaving Maya alone in the hotel room the next morning. We hear in a voiceover from Tony that he didn't realize at the time, but he had just created demons. Please note the plural there. Cut to 2013. Tony has been having problems with insomnia and is working on the Mark 42 Iron Man suit. This suit is controlled by implants in Tony's body, and he can summon individual pieces of the suit to his body. We are then introduced to the Mandarin via a video diatribe that cut into the broadcast airwaves of the United States. The video makes it clear the 10 Rings is a Middle Eastern terrorist organization, and it takes credit for a bombing at a U.S. military base in Kuwait. The Mandarin finishes by saying that there is more to come. In response to this threat, the President rebrands War Machine as the Iron Patriot and tasks Rhodey with taking out the Mandarin. Tony has a meeting with Rhodey to discuss what's going on and to offer some help. In the middle of the meeting, Tony has an anxiety attack and has to leave. Cut to Stark Industries, where Pepper is meeting with Aldrich Killian. He's there to pimp Extremis. He shows her a live feed of his neural activity and says that Extremis harnesses the body's bioelectrical potential and that the mind and DNA is just waiting for an upgrade. Happy is now the head of security for Stark Industries and watching all of this go down from the waiting room outside Pepper's office. He doesn't like how friendly Pepper and Killian appear to be getting, and he doesn't like the look of the guy that came along with Killian. Pepper, for her part, thinks the tech is interesting, but is concerned with the potential for weaponization of it. Super soldiers, that sort of thing. So she turns him down. She comes home for date night and finds that Tony has already eaten and is distracted with his Iron Man suits. Tony admits that he has been having trouble sleeping since the battle in New York, that he doesn't know that if he can protect her from all the new and crazy threats that are out there. She tells him to join her in the shower, and we cut to both of them asleep in bed later. Tony is having nightmares, and Pepper is awakened by Tony moaning in his sleep. She tries to wake him up, and the Mark 42 grabs her arm and pulls her off of Tony. She gasps in horror, and that wakes Tony up. He tells the suit to power down. He tells Pepper that he must have called it in his sleep. Shocked, Pepper says that she's going to sleep downstairs and storms off. Cut to the Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. Happy has followed Savin there and watches him hand off a briefcase to another individual. As the man is leaving, Happy bumps into him and he drops the suitcase and it opens, spilling multiple vials. Happy pockets one of the items and starts to walk away. Savin then bumps into him and they exchange words. Happy tells him he knows what's going on and holds up the vial. Savin grabs it, but Happy won't let go. Happy punches Savin, whose face then glows and the broken nose heals. Savin then easily throws Happy like a ragdoll into a souvenir stand. The man who Savin dropped the stuff off to takes a huge inhalation of Extremis and then explodes. Happy is wounded in the blast and Savin is too, but he is able to heal and he walks away from the scene. We get another video with the Mandarin claiming credit for the explosion at the theater and saying that there's more to come. Cut to Tony visiting Happy at the hospital. Happy looks to be in a coma and he is on a ventilator. As Tony leaves the hospital, he is swamped by reporters wanting to know what he is going to do about this latest attack. Tony issues a challenge to the Mandarin and gives his home address. So now, of course, it's game on.
Game on! Game on!
This leads us to one of the problems of an interconnected cinematic universe. Tony just threatened an international terrorist on live TV. Where are the rest of the Avengers? Or even S.H.I.E.L.D. for that matter? Anyone? Well, we get Rhodey later, but that's it. Some friends you got there. So Tony goes back to his home and begins an analysis of a digital reconstruction of the Chinese theater bombing. Using it, he discovers a soldier's dog tag, and also that the bomb detonated with a heat spike of 3,000 degrees centigrade with no pieces of the device found. He then has Jarvis map other reports of heat spikes and traces an original explosion involving another soldier in Tennessee. He then tells Jarvis to make a flight plan for Tennessee. But before he can leave, Maya Hansen shows up saying that she needs to talk to him. Pepper then comes downstairs and gives Tony some grief over an old girlfriend showing up when they are leaving town. They then have an argument about staying versus leaving when a missile crashes into the house. Tony summons his new Come On Command suit to enclose Pepper. Like me, I'm sure you're asking, how did Tony have time to send the armor to Pepper? Explosions are notoriously fast and deadly. Well,
It's all in the reflexes.
actually, for this to work better, I think they should have Tony see the missile on TV and then immediately send the suit to Pepper before a missile hits. As it is, they should have been pulped. So anyways, both Tony and Maya have hard landings from the concussive force of the explosion, with Maya being knocked out. So Tony has Pepper get Maya out of the house while he figures out a plan. Once Pepper and Maya are relatively safe, Tony summons his armor and turns to attack the Mandarin's henchmen. Of course, it's a prototype and so none of the weapon systems are online. Tony still manages to take out 2 of the 3 helicopters that are attacking, but his house is too badly damaged and falls into the ocean, taking Tony with it. Tony is trapped under debris, struggling to breathe as the suit is filling with water when Jarvis takes over one of the gloves to pull him free. The suit then flies up out of the ocean and into the sky. Tony then wakes up to an alarm as his suit is almost out of power and crashes into the wilderness of Tennessee. Tony opens his suit before it goes completely offline to discover the snowy briskness of the local weather. He then drags the suit to a nearby residential garage/workshop and breaks in. He is soon discovered by a child named Harley that lives in the home here. Harley's mother is away at work and his dad left years ago. Harley sees the Iron Man suit and realizes that this is Tony Stark.
No way.
Who the press is calling presumed dead at the moment. Tony gives the boy a non-lethal weapon to use to defend himself from bullies at school in return for letting him stay in the garage and getting him some supplies. Back in Malibu, Pepper is looking at the destruction of her and Tony's home and finds an Iron Man helmet and puts it on. It activates, and a message from Tony plays telling her that he is alive and has something he needs to do before he can return home. We then see Pepper driving along the PCH with Maya, and she asks why she needed to see Tony. Maya tells her that she thinks her boss, Aldrich Killian, works for the Mandarin. Cut to Aldrich Killian receiving a call about how they managed to destroy Stark's home, but there's no sign of a body. Killian says they'll talk about it later as the Master is here and ready to make another video. The Mandarin shows up and everyone is properly deferential to him. Back in Tennessee, Tony and Harley are walking to the site where the soldier set off a bomb, killing himself and 5 others. On the walls of the surrounding buildings, you can see the scorched imprints of 5 people. Harley says the blast crater reminds him of the wormhole from New York, and Tony says he doesn't want to talk about it. They like to share sarcastic barbs at each other, and Harley keeps asking Tony questions until he has another anxiety attack. Once Tony settles down, he asks if the soldier had any relatives, and Harley says that the soldier's mother is still in town and is usually at a nearby bar. Tony finds her at a table and he sits down. She gives him a folder with information on her son, saying that her son didn't want any part of this. Tony tells her that she must be waiting for someone else, but looks at the files just the same. He notices that her son worked with another soldier named Taggart, which was the name on the dog tags from the Chinese theater bombing, and tells her that he doesn't think that her son killed himself. Just then a woman slams a badge onto the table and then picks up Tony and slams him onto the table as well and cuffs him. As it so happens, the local sheriff is there as well and takes exception to the woman's actions. He wants to know what she's doing and she tries to pull rank on him, saying that she's with Homeland Security. The sheriff doesn't care that she's a Fed, he wants to know what's going on. Her hands glow and heats up her badge and she presses it into his face. She then punches a hole through the sheriff and grabs the deputy's gun and shoots them both. Tony takes off across the street to a closed diner, trying to get the woman away from them where civilians might get hurt. They tussle for a bit and Tony chokes her using the cuffs and she heats up, melting the cuffs off. Tony improvises a bomb and blows the woman into some power lines, killing her. But it turns out she wasn't alone. Savin is here. He has Harley and he says he wants the file. Tony gets the kid to use the non-lethal weapon he gave him earlier, and Harley gets free. Tony then blasts him with a one-use repulsor he conjured together. He then grabs the keys from Savin's pocket and tells Harley to keep an eye on his suit, and he will call for it. Tony then leaves. Next up, another Mandarin video. He says he has 2 lessons left for the president. The Mandarin is sitting on his throne pointing a gun at a man lying at his feet. The man is an accountant for Roxxon Oil. The Mandarin says that the number for the phone next to him has been programmed into the president's cell phone, and if he doesn't call in the next 30 seconds, the accountant dies on live TV. The president calls, but the Mandarin doesn't answer the phone. Instead, he points the gun down and shoots the accountant off camera. He then says he only has one more lesson for the president, that he can run and hide, but the Mandarin is coming for him. U.S. intelligence tracks the signal to Pakistan, and the president orders that the Iron Patriot be sent immediately to find and take out the Mandarin. Cut to Tony driving. He looks at the files and notices that one of the papers says MIA, but then it occurs to him to turn the paper over. On the other side is the word AIM. He calls Rhodey, who is in Pakistan at the moment, and asks who is responsible for the Iron Patriot upgrades. Rhodey tells him that it was AIM. Tony tells him that he's going to need Rhodey's ID and password to look up some encrypted military files, and Rhodey gives them to him. Tony then pulls into the parking lot of a pageant that is going on and breaks into a news van and uses its satellite uplink to access the military database. Here he sees Killian talking to wounded soldiers, including an armless woman who is the same person as the woman pretending to be Homeland Security earlier. He then watches the video of wounded veterans being given extremis. Most of the soldiers regrow their missing appendages, but one has a bad reaction to the serum and explodes. So Tony now realizes that the formula is unstable, but Killian has sold it to the Mandarin anyways. Pepper and Maya are holed up in a hotel somewhere, and Maya is voicing her regrets about what has happened to her research under AIM control. There's a knock at the door and it's Killian. He grabs Pepper and asks Maya what she was doing at Tony's place yesterday. Maya says that she is trying to fix the serum and didn't know that Killian and the Master were going to blow it up. She says that they're going to need Stark to fix the formula, and their holding Pepper will make for a great incentive. Cut to Rhodey checking out another lead in Pakistan. This time it turns out to be a sweatshop, and all the women there thank him as they head for the door. All but one, whose hand heats up as she is shaking Rhodes' hand. For some reason, the Iron Patriot armor seizes up and keels over immobile. The woman pulls off her burqa and calls Savin and says that she has the Iron Patriot armor. So Tony is back on the road, and he calls Harley to check up on the Mark 42 armor. Harley says that Jarvis is back online. Tony has Harley place the phone where he can talk to Jarvis and ask Jarvis if he was able to track the Mandarin signal. Jarvis tells him that it originated in Miami. Tony wants to know how the armor is coming along, and Jarvis tells him that it's recharging, but the power source is iffy, and it might not restore the armor. Tony freaks out and has another panic attack, but Harley talks him down, telling him that he's a mechanic, so build something. Tony calms down and tells Harley thanks, and then he sets to work. So Tony goes on a little shopping spree at a hardware store. He then holes up somewhere and gets to work making stuff. Next up, Miami. Using the newly improvised weapons he made, Tony slips past the guards of the mansion and finds the Mandarin. And this is where it goes off the rails and disappoints me. It's not the Mandarin. Turns out he's an actor named Trevor Slattery, who's working for Aldrich Killian. Now, where have I seen this before? Oh yeah, just 3 years earlier, Batman Begins. But I was expecting and wanting to see was the Ten Rings out for revenge for Stark's and Obadiah Stane's betrayals. What we get here instead is AIM posing as the Ten Rings to create a diversion from their experiments going wrong. And when you come to think about it, this is similar to the story of the first Iron Man film, loosely speaking anyways. In both Iron Man and Iron Man 3, it appears that the Ten Rings are the bad guys, but it turns out the true bad guys are actually everybody's favorite cliché, the evil white CEO. Now, in the comics, the Mandarin is Chinese, and his appearance seems to be inspired by the old Fu Manchu movies from the 30s and 40s. In the comics, the Mandarin has 10 rings of power on each of his hands. Each of the rings has a different power, ranging from various energy beams to being able to psychically dominate a person. Having seen the rings in the trailer, I was expecting to see them in the movie. And we do indeed see Trevor's Mandarin wearing rings, but they have no powers. They are purely ornamental. And Killian's Mandarin has no rings. His powers are given to him by extremists. Now, we do eventually get a Chinese leader for the Ten Rings in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, but he isn't called the Mandarin, and his rings are bracelets. But that's another story. So while Trevor is spilling what little beans he knows, Savin comes in behind Tony and knocks him out. Tony then wakes up in a dungeon, zip-tied to a bed frame, while Maya is working at a computer. She tries to get him to help, showing the notes he made on a name badge back in the conference in 1999. He doesn't remember any of that, and he says he can't help. He then appeals to her conscience. Killian shows up. He thanks Tony for giving him desperation and the idea for anonymity. Killian then shows Tony that Pepper has been given the serum and her body is in the process of either accepting it or rejecting it. Maybe Tony would have some ideas about how to make it stable. Maya decides this is a step too far, even though abducting Pepper was her idea. Anyways, she holds a vial to her neck and then threatens to overdose, which would cause her to explode unless he lets Tony go. Killian tries to talk her out of it, but in the end shoots her and kills her. He then tells Tony that a high-level position has just opened up in his organization. Killian leaves for another part of the mansion. Here his men are trying to get into the Iron Patriot armor. Killian tells them to step aside, and then he begins to heat the armor with his hand. Eventually the suit gets too hot and it automatically opens up. Rhodey leaps out and hits Savin, but Killian breathes fire and just misses Rhodey, causing him to surrender. Meanwhile, the alarm on his watch goes off, notifying Tony that the Mark 42 should be charged by now. He threatens the two guards, and we get a few minutes of Marvel levity as the armor doesn't show up while Tony jerks about in his bindings. But some of it eventually shows up, and we get a nice fight scene between Tony and several guards. After he beats the guards using the little bits of armor that showed up, the rest finally makes it. So then Tony and Rhodey meet up in the main house to talk with Trevor after seeing the Iron Patriot armor take off for parts unknown. Trevor doesn't know all the plan, but he does know that some of it is offshore along the coast, and he says that it involves the vice president. Tony and Rhodey get a boat, and Tony calls the VP to warn him that the Mandarin may be coming after him. Turns out the VP is in cahoots with the Mandarin, as he has a daughter that is missing the lower part of her right leg. Meanwhile, Savin is in the Iron Patriot armor, and he takes out the President's Secret Service detail on Air Force One, and loads the President into the armor and sends him on a pre-programmed flight. Before Savin can bail out of the plane too, the Mark 42 shows up and they fight. Tony eventually wins, killing Savin. At a dock in Miami, Killian has everything set up for the next Mandarin video. The president shows up in the Patriot armor and is strung up between some cranes. The plan is, the Ten Rings are going to use flamethrowers to cook the president in the armor live on TV for the nation to see. The VP will then become president and will fund AIM's research into extremists. As Killian's goons are stringing the president up, Tony and Rhodey sneak into the area. They are seen and the AIM troops start to surround them. Things are looking a little grim when a bunch of Tony's various armors show up. There's a big fight between the armor and AIM troops. Rhodey rescues the president and takes him somewhere safe while Tony and Killian face off. They have a fake Pepper death. She survives thanks to her new healing powers. Tony thinks he kills Killian, but like all good monsters, he comes back. Then Pepper shows up to save the day. She's worried about what has happened to her, and Tony says that he thinks he can fix the serum. And part of me wants to know if he really needs to. If the serum is permanent, she hasn't exploded, so it should be stable. And if the serum isn't permanent, and I'm thinking it's not since it has been shown that the AIM troops take follow-up doses, then just let some time pass as the effects wear off. As it is never mentioned in the MCU again. They did use the serum in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, but I never saw past the first season, so I don't know what became of it there. And the non-Disney Plus shows are not considered canon, so it doesn't matter. Tony blows up all of his suits to make Pepper happy. The VP is arrested. Happy wakes up, and Harley gets a new mechanic lab in his garage. So Merry Christmas, one and all. The end. So there you have it, Iron Man 3. As I said, I was disappointed in their treatment of the Mandarin and the retread of the right-hand man is the real boss plot device, but other than that, I found it to be entertaining. It's well directed, the actors give good performances, there's plenty of action, and the CG is top-notch. There might be a little too much humor in it, considering the gravity of the story, but that's just one man's opinion. The movie made $1.2 billion on a budget of $200 million, so clearly the public at large enjoyed it. I would certainly recommend it, especially over the other two Marvel disappointments I've already done videos for, but it isn't without its issues. Until next time.